What's going on, y'all? This is John B, aka Smooth Hot Chocolate here. It took a long time to come up with the review, but I'm finally ready to do my review for Goosebumps, Night of the Living Dummy 2. Now, when I think about Night of the Living Dummy 2, I think about that phrase, or that term rather, deja vu, which means doing something you felt that you've done before. Well, in this case, it's like I've actually read something that I think I've read before. That's because of the fact that everything that's in this book is the same thing as what I read in the first one, actually, except with different characters, though. So the book is mainly about a girl named Amy who is a ventriloquist, or at least likes to be one, and she's trying to get a new dummy after her old one, Dennis, pretty much falls apart for real. So her father gets her Slappy from the pawn shop, though, and that's when trouble ensues, pretty much. Now, the thing I have to think about with how Slappy got there to the pawn shop in the first place is it's pure speculation too. Is that in some point in the first book, when Slappy says to Chris, in the end of the book, "Hey, slave, is that other guy gone? I thought he'd never leave." I think at some point Chris probably knew about the spell that she was trying to use Mr. Wood to put him back to sleep. It didn't work. So, for some reason, however, Slappy was able to succumb to that spell and put him to sleep. And then, because of the fact that they couldn't return Mr. Wood because he was steamrolled to death, the father decided to take Slappy, that originally Lindy had found in that dumpster, to the pawn shop to get money back for him. And I'm thinking to myself that when the pawn shop guy gives Amy's father the Slappy dummy, he said that he just gave it away for dirt cheap, pretty much. But I'm thinking to myself, if you kind of know about how bad Slappy dummy is, why are you accepting it? Just say no. That's it. But whatever. So Amy unknowingly releases a spell to bring him to life, and we know what happens after that. And it's the thing that Slappy doesn't really do much of anything in this book. Just, making trouble and stuff, like in Sarah's room for some reason, just her room, where because her sister is a artist, and it's pretty much just tipping over paints in the room of her and stuff, and just, before we even get to that, just being a total jerk and saying things against Amy's will. Now, when it comes to the paints being tipped over in Sarah's room, like I was getting ready to say, um, there was a thing where, if you watch Greg from Paparina, love his channel by the way too, really do. When he was reviewing this book too back then, he said something about how when people take Jed's word for what he says to the family, I don't think that's the case, because in the chapter when she goes into her sister's room to get markers off from there, and then she's stopped by Jed because he wants her to play games with him, and she declines. She's working on a school project. He asks her why was she going to her room. She tells him none of his business. So pretty much, basically, that's kind of grounds for making the assumption, or presumed assumption, that maybe she was going to go into her room to mess things up, even though we know better about that, because she actively says that she did not. She's the narrator through the whole book. But because of the fact that she tells, that he tells the mom about what happens when her sister gets back from shopping and sees the mess in the room, that everything is just all what she had told Jed about, none of his business, about her going into her room to get markers out. If she hadn't been much of an asshole about that, maybe it would have lifted any suspicion off of her, but whatever. So she gets grounded for doing something that we know she didn't do. And the whole time, it's just where she tries to prove her innocence about why, she didn't, do the things that she believes that Slappy did, because he's alive, actually. But the thing about the spell is, it kind of gets forgotten about in her mind during the whole story. In fact, we don't even know anything about, or rather, she never says anything about this spell at all until we get to, I think, chapter 19 or so. Yes, 19, where he finally speaks in the chapter before we end on that chapter, go to the next chapter, and then she's wondering as to why is he coming to life and stuff, and then he tells her that she read the magic words, but it never really dawns on her to ever say those words again, because possibly, it might put him back to sleep. As we know in future books, whenever people get Slappy, and people read the spell first, he's awake, and then say it again, he's asleep. it never dawned her to say the spell ever again, so that's kind of weird, you know. But it's all about just trying to get rid of them. Just get rid of them however you can, even if it's the very same way as it was in the last book when you try to throw them away and stuff, and that doesn't work. Uh, the only thing that I kind of like about this book, in a sense, is because of the parents actually believing that the dummy is alive when during the whole book she has to try to pretty much drill into their head that he's alive and they don't believe her. But reality is, how are you gonna believe a doll who's doing all these things at first? It's kind of strange. And then when it gets to near the end of the book, then you see that, wow, he really has been doing things all the time. We apologize for how we treated you. And I bet that in the first book, Chris and Lindy never got vindication for what happened with Mr. Wood back in that book. Actually, it's just how it is. So it's just regular Goosebump fare when it comes to it. Um, so with that being said, this book is probably the weakest of the trilogy and the OG62 series. I think the first one and the third one is probably the better ones, and the sequel kind of just falls right in between, literally in both senses. So it's kind of like we have Castlevania 1 and 3 being pretty good Nintendo games for the time, but then Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, is kind of like the oddball of the trilogy. It's kind of like with this one here too, though. I'm not saying it's a bad book, it's not. It just kind of makes a few of the same things it does in the first one, and so it's like we already know what's going to happen before it actually happens, in a sense. But I still recommend this book to you if you ever want to, read it for yourself too, or audio form or what have you. So I give this book pretty much a B. Yeah, a solid B for being a little bit different, not too different, but still enjoyable nonetheless. Though, you know, um, I just wish the Slappy had did more things, and when it comes to him saying that I have powers, do something with your powers. Don't just say that you have powers and don't do anything to back them up, because he still gets his ass handed to him by a little girl. In fact, actually, two girls. All right, and like I said, it's the very same thing as it was in the last book, where they get pretty much manhandled, even though they say, "Oh, we got powers," but you don't really do anything to show your strength. It's just so dumb. Um, so that being said, that's been a review for Night Women number 2. If you liked the video, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, everyone, take care and have a good rest of the day.